Hello there, this is Talking Europe on France 24. We are at the European Parliament in Brussels, where policymakers are tackling a very specific and a very emotive issue. Now, each year, 1 billion poultry birds and tens of millions of other farm animals are transported within and outside of the European Union to be bred from, to be fattened or slaughtered. Now, regulations on how that transportation happens do exist, but scores of breaches of the regulations have been documented in official audits carried out by the European Commission in recent years. Well, documented breaches recently include cattle kept inside trucks for 5 days straight when they're meant to be unloaded for a rest each day. There's also been hundreds of chicks left unattended at Madrid airport who starved to death. And then there were thousands of sheep that drowned when their overloaded ship capsized in a Romanian port in 2019. Well, now members of the European Parliament are getting involved. They've just set up an inquiry committee specifically on the live transport of animals. Today, we're going to be finding out more about the issues and some of the solutions being put forward. Joining me are the chair of that inquiry committee, Luxembourgish Green MEP Tilly Mes. Hello there.
Hello.
Hi, and another member of the committee is also with us, Romanian Social Democrat MEP Carmen Avram. Hi there.
Hello.
Now, I know this is an issue that's very close to both of your hearts, but I'd just like to ask, first off, it's a very, very specific inquiry committee, the transport of animals. Tilly Mes, why is this needed?
There are a lot of issues concerning the transport of animals. You said it, millions of animals being transported every day throughout Europe and even also outside the borders of the European Union. We have their reports not only from NGOs, but also of the European Court of Auditors. We have audits of the European Commission. So now the mission of this inquiry committee is really to look at how systematic these breaches are and who is responsible at the level of the Commission, of the member states, of the transport companies, etc. So we really want to do a deep but fair analysis of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I mentioned, there are existing regulations about the transport of live animals. Everyone knows there's lots of regulation in Europe. Carmen Avram, why are the existing regulations being breached?
Some of them are breached because they can. Because I just recently read a study where they said that it's been a huge variety, a huge difference between the number of controls that are being done inside the European Union. So they start from 0 in some regions to 1 million controls per year for live transport of animals in other regions. So this lack of controls in some regions encourages some sellers to have a disregard for the current legislation. But also there is another thing that is, and I think it's a problem, is that the live animal transport and the regulation we are going to have, hopefully, another one, it overlaps with welfare animal, of course. But in the same time, we have no DG responsible for animal welfare. So we have this welfare which is divided by DG Agri and then DG Sante, but no DG regarding animal welfare.
These are the parts of the Commission.
Yeah.
So agriculture, health, transport.
Yes, and I think it would be very good for the Commission, since the focus is so much on animal welfare in all the aspects, in the farm, on the road, at the destination, to have a DG that is really focused on animal welfare.
Well, I know that some MEPs and animal welfare groups, NGOs that you mentioned, they want the live transport of animals for slaughter to be stopped completely. Just stop that, slaughter animals close to where they're raised and then transport meat. Others say, look, you can transport animals a little bit. We should reduce the amount of time. Where do you stand on this at this point, without having done the full year of inquiry?
So I think we are quite happy that the Commission announced now that they want to have a revision of the existing regulation of 2005. And there, indeed, the hours where animals are allowed to be transported, of course, are very long. So we want for sure I think one of the conclusions that we might have for sure is to reduce the hours of transport to 8 hours, for example. Now, it's different to the species, but they're much longer, and we know that even the rest time often are not respected, and so on and so forth. So it's a question of hours, but it's also a question of how they get to water, how they get to their feed, which is often not possible. It's a question of ventilation, of temperature, etc. So there are, at a lot of points, animal welfare is not guaranteed. So it's really an opportunity now, and citizens are really waiting for us there. I just allowed to remind you that 82% of the citizens looking at the Eurobarometer really take care of animal welfare. So it's now really an opportunity to bring some changes and recommendations for the revision of this existing regulation of 2005.
Carmen Avram, what do you think? Should we be banning the transportation of live animals, or, as Tilimes says, looking more at putting a limit on the amount of time and reducing the limit?
Yeah, first of all, this committee will not deal with that, as you said at the beginning. It's just an inquiry committee to see where the legislation is not applied and why, and to find some solutions maybe. In the end, this idea of banning exports of animals might come up in a different committee, in a different legislation. Second, I don't think that we should ban exports because, let's say, planes. You have a lot of planes in the history crashing. We didn't stop airplanes, we didn't stop travel by air. So what we need to do is to look at this legislation, because sometimes the legislation, we have 5 directives and 2 regulations in animal welfare, and all of them are vague and also lacking some of the animals, because animals have specific vulnerabilities, they have specific diseases. We didn't deal with that so far. We didn't deal, for instance, with sheep, which are exported in a huge number. So we need to focus on the legislation which is specific to one animal, to make controls more inside the European Union, to coordinate with third countries, because the things that happen bad to a lot of things that happen with the animals is outside the European Union as well, where the truck drivers, for instance, they forge the log for their transport. They forge documents. They don't respect the times for resting and for feeding for the animals, because it's allowed, because the third countries have no interest to respect the EU legislation.
Well, actually, recently the Netherlands suspended live animal transports to non-EU countries where there were doubts about those countries meeting EU standards. And I know that Austria has followed suit as well. Tilimes, should the rest of the European Union's member states be taking that same path?
You know, looking at the regulation, we are responsible for the transport of the animals until they arrive. And afterwards, what's happening afterwards to them, we cannot control anymore. So it's really an important question that we have to ask. Some might say, okay, but this country needs this animal for breeding. Okay, but if it is really for breeding, then there must be proof that there really was also this effect that was reached. Otherwise, you can really question, does it give sense to export, to do all these animals suffering outside then also the European Union, where we know that there are a lot of breaches for the moment also on vessels which are not adapted at all for animal transport. And coming back to the hours, concerning myself, but afterwards about compromise also on the recommendation of the how long a trip for animals might be. Even 8 hours is enormous stress for animals. Let's be honest. If you ask me, 4 would be enough. And then you have to make a difference also between unweaned animals. So for them, it's horrible what's going on. It's a very cruel system, which is also a symptom of our whole supply chain that is behind that, of course.
And one thing we haven't mentioned is, who is checking up on these breaches of regulations. You mentioned, Carmen Avram, that there is no overarching umbrella body or Directorate General looking at animal welfare. But all the same, the European Commission has had around 200 reports about breaches in regulations over the past decade. the Commission can launch infringement proceedings against the member states who are supposed to be checking up on this. Shouldn't the Commission be doing that?
Yeah, you know, I think the problem with controls, with verifying the transport, is lying in the personnel. The personnel is not always trained to understand even the technical maps from a ship, for instance. They just look in general at the animals, see if some are hurt or suffering or even dead, and then they just give the go-ahead for the ship. We need trained personnel to be present before the ship leaves for Middle East, for instance. We need trained personnel to understand at the border when a truck leaves the European Union. We need a trained personnel to understand if the stocking density is the right one, if the animals have air, if they have room to move freely, like the freedoms, the 5 freedoms of the animal welfare says. So the European Commission needs to look more detailed these things.
Tilima, same question to you. Should the Commission be sanctioning member states at this point, seeing as there have been these details of breaches?
Yeah, there should be consequence, but you also have to give the necessary resources on human resources, on training. That's completely true. What is really needed for the animals, but also, yeah, to put the money in that in order that the controls can be effective. And if we have the conclude that there are a lot of breaches, of course, there must be consequences. That's for sure.
And you believe that European citizens are behind this initiative?
I think even more than behind us. I think they are really waiting for us. I got so many feedbacks already now that people are saying, oh, please, make something change. We need clear information, raising awareness, clear labeling also. And most of all, we need things to change for these millions of animals.
All right, we will have to leave it there, but we'll surely come back to you when you've completed your 1 year of inquiry into all of this. Thanks so much, Tilima and Carmen Avram. Thanks to you for watching as well. Hope to see you soon for more Talking Europe.